Good morning, LHMS 116. We just finished with the Edgar Allan Poe biography, and now we're moving on to one of his first pieces that we're going to be looking at. It's not first in the chronological order, but it is the first piece that we're going to be looking at. And the poem is called Annabel Lee. Now, along with reading the poem, you're going to answer some questions. But it's important, it's imperative that you understand what it is you're reading. So, if you don't know a word, please look it up. You have to look it up because it's just going to add a great deal more gravity to the poem, but it's going to also make it make sense. Like if you don't know what a word means, you don't know what he's trying to communicate. But if you learn what that word means, then you can know what he's trying to communicate. So I'm going to go through these questions. Now, some of these questions you don't need me to go through, and I also like to keep my videos short. This way I don't bore you too long, with like a 35 to 45 minute video. This one should only take about 20 minutes. I'm just kidding. It'll take maybe somewhere between 8, 10, maybe 11 minutes, and I'll try to keep it that way. So I feel the first few questions are pretty upfront, like the setting. We're talking about where it's taking place, which it's in the poem. Also, the relationship with the speaker, it's in the poem. And what did Annabel Lee do? Also in the poem. So I think when you get to those things, not such a big deal. But as we move on, we're gonna hear some questions that you might not exactly know what they mean, so I want to go over those. Now, I would also remind you that if you're watching this and you have not read the poem, good. I want you to read the poem, read the questions, reread the poem, then answer the questions. That is how you should do it. That is always how you should do it. I will preach that until you are 9th grade students. And even then, if you come back to see me, I will tell you straight up, hey, do you remember the fourfold process for reading a passage and answering the questions? And you had better say, yes, I do. And I do it, Mr. Neiman. Great, wonderful, lovely, awesome, fantastic. Aside from that, we have also included in the Google Classroom somebody reading the poem, which is, again, is always great. Now, you can read it with your inner monologue. You can read it out loud. But there's always something different, especially when you go onto YouTube, because some people like to add effects, like maybe you'll hear the wind blow in this case or something. So you really want to pay attention to those pieces to the puzzle. So we'll move on. Let's look at number 5. And this is huge because you might not understand what the word tone is when you're talking about reading a poem. And number 5 asks, what is the tone of the poem? When it talks about the tone of the poem, it's talking about sort of the feel or the attitude behind, looking at the context clues, sort of what words is Poe using to convey his message. So ultimately, you might be thinking, I don't know what any of these words are, Mr. Neiman. Great, look them up. Look them up. Then when you find out what they are, you might be thinking to yourself, man, that's kind of dark. And guess what? That is in some ways you could say that. I'm not trying to give away answers here, though. I'm trying to get you to understand that when we talk about tone, all I can think about is when my mom or my dad would ask a question of me and I would try to get, all smart with them and sarcastic, whatever that word is. And my dad would always, he was a master of this. He'd be reading the paper and he'd just go like this, watch your tone. That's the kind of all he'd say. And I'd be like, whatever I just said there, don't say it like that again. And we're talking about the way it comes out, the way that it's expressed, that I express. So in this case, we're talking about Poe's expression. What words is he using and what does his vocabulary convey concerning this particular poem? So when you read number 5, it's talking about what is the tone of the poem. You're talking about the overall feel based on the words that are being used. And that should be a tough one, but you're in 8th grade now, and we're going to use this type of question as we move along. So it's important that you understand what it is. The next question sort of plays off that, And it's the idea is list the words that indicate the tone. So if you tell me the tone is happy, you would say there are certain words, which I'm not giving answers, but I'm telling you that this is not an answer. It's not happy. That doesn't mean it's sad, but it's not happy. Okay? So the fact that if I were to say that it's happy, you would then ask me, what's your justification for saying that? What are your reasons for saying that? What are the words that Poe uses that make you think that it's happy? I would say something like, there's the word cheerful, there's the word delightful. The picture he paints in lines 4, 5, and 6 is somebody running through a lily field, and life is grand, and the sunshine and the clouds are, just beautiful. They're real thick, puffy clouds. And that would convey a message of cheerfulness or delight or happy. Now, you don't find that in this poem. You find something else. And with that in mind, I want you to tell me the words that you use to come up with answer number 5 and number 6. Winged seraph. You would have to know what a seraph is. The seraphim, you would have to know what that is. So if you don't know what that means, this is your opportunity to, while no one's looking, grab a dictionary and open, well, if anybody does that anymore, now we just click on Google, put the word in the search bar, and it shows up, and then it gives us a definition as soon as we hit enter. And that is easy. You should be able to do that. You should do that. There is no reason for you to not know the definition of a word of something that you're reading right now in 8th grade. Not that you have to memorize it, but you have to at least commit it to memory long enough to make that make sense. This way you get the overall tone. This way you get the overall feel of the poem. What is trying to be referred to? Another vocabulary word, coveted. The word is coveted. And if you don't know what that word is, look it up. Copy and paste for all I care. But you need to know in the context of the poem what that word means. Let's look at number 13. There is a gentleman who wrote way back when, and I'm talking way back when. And his name was William Shakespeare. Don't know who that is? That's okay. However, William Shakespeare wrote a classic tale entitled Romeo and Juliet. Romeo was this, I'm not going to call him, he was very Flynn Rider-ish. He was just a guy on the street just doing his thing. But he fell in love with this fair maiden who used to stand out the window, and her name was Juliet. She was of the upper class, the upper crust. And now no street guy is going to fall in love with her, and she's just going to go, oh, he loves me, I must love him back. That's not how it works. He has to win her love. He has to woo her. And he does. So these two people from opposite spectrums of the stratosphere, the universe, cross paths. Therefore, they are star-crossed lovers. And that is what it means when we talk about Romeo and Juliet being star-crossed lovers. And in this case, Edgar Allan Poe talks about Isabel, huh? How about you know who it is? Annabel Lee, Annabel Lee and Edgar Allan Poe are star-crossed lovers coming from two entirely different socioeconomic statuses. You're not going to know what that means. Different playing fields, right? So one person lives in a high-rise mansion. The other person is just scraping by at the backseat of his car type of deal. One person's barely in just a small trailer. The other one lives in a big mansion. I would probably lean towards, I was in we did have 2-story home. That was kind of crazy. That was nuts. My wife and I came from 1,400 square feet. That's what my kids grew up in. So that's kind of normal. So that's who Romeo and Juliet are. So upper crust, sort of, not dregs of society, just a normal everyday person. And they're different places in the universe, but they cross. They're star-crossed lovers. They fall in love. Here's another one. Rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. Rhyme we know. Time we know. It costs you a dime. Right? That is simple stuff. It's the idea of the light. It's bright. Am I right? So we understand rhyme. We also understand repetition. 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 How long is he going to go like this? Just so you get my point. Rhyming, repetition. We get both those. What is rhythm? Rhythm is something that you all know, you just don't know you know it. You didn't know to categorize it as such. It's the idea of how we write music. I got guitars back there. I got a guitar right here. You understand rhythm, whether you know it or not. There is a rhythm to music. And so the idea is that you understand that there are beats, there are measure, there's time in Annabel Lee. And I don't have the poem in front of me, but if you say it out loud, you will hear this up and down motion through the entire poem, throughout the entire poem. You will hear it. My Annabel Lee, who I loved, who is now by the sea. Okay? So you're going to hear that if you say it out loud or if you listen to it, you're going to hear that rhythm. Just like in music, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it in this poem too. So we know what rhyme is. We know what repetition is. And now we know a little bit about rhythm. And believe it or not, it's the same thing when it comes to poetry. So I'm coming up on 12 minutes now, so I want to get through this. Another word, sepulcher. Sepulcher. Nobody uses that in everyday language. That's okay if you don't know what it is. Just look it up and understand what it is and see how it plays into this poem. Last 4 questions here. 17 tries to compare sepulcher and tomb and how one comes off very and the other one's a little softer. What is a stanza? That's a great question. A stanza is a group of lines. And what I've done in our Google Classroom is I've put the start number at 1, stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4, stanza 5, stanza 6. So I've given you the numbers of the stanza. So each collection of lines is a stanza. And there could be as many as 2, there could be as many as 4, there could be as many as 6. And I think in this case there are 6. In some cases there might be 8. I think stanza 6, there's 8. So each group, and you can see that there's separated by a break. What does the speaker do every night? That is in the poem. So basically what I'm trying to communicate right here, right now, is the fact that these questions are difficult, and there are a number of them, but if you follow the 4 stanzas in my mind, the 4-fold play of read the poem, read the questions, reread the poem, answer the questions, you will be much better off. That's all I'm saying. Hopefully that helps you guys. Rock stars, I can't wait to see you again. Bye.